New rule in honor of the Academy Awards show this Sunday. Tonight, I would like to commemorate the moment 50 years ago that transformed the Oscar telecast into what it is today. A 4-hour lecture on how bad most people have it by the people who have it the best. You rail against privilege, but you avail yourself of the greatest privilege of all, to remain clueless. Dave Chappelle lashed out at me last month because I called him out for saying there was more free speech in Saudi Arabia than here. Well, I was right. What he said was stupid. America has many problems, including free speech issues on both left and right, but we're real different than Saudi Arabia. If you don't believe me, try opening a lesbian art gallery.
Hollywood is gearing up for the Oscars, but awards season increasingly feels less like celebrating movies and more like a 4-hour therapy session hosted by people who've never stood in a normal line. Bill Maher calls out the industry's obsession with virtue signaling, pins, ribbons, optics, and performative activism, turning causes into fashion statements. Normal people roll their eyes, and Maher's soft canceling shows how dissent is punished quietly. Fewer invites, colder rooms, invisible treatment. He wasn't switching sides, just questioning progressive orthodoxy. Yet in modern Hollywood, even a small challenge can make you feel socially exiled.
I just got a Golden Globe nomination for the one I did.
Oh, really?
That's yesterday.
How often do you get nominated for your specials?
Nothing. I used to get nominated for everything.
Yeah.
And then the wokeness came in, and then I was considered conservative. Which
Are you bad?
Ridiculous. So I was what I call soft canceled.
Yeah.
Where you don't
Well, I'm a Bill Clinton liberal, which is from the 90s, which is now called a Nazi.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
You're a white supremacist.
So this is the first time in a while I've been nominated for something.
Okay.
Which I think shows a little bit that we are coming out.
Maher calls himself a Bill Clinton-style liberal, moderate, pro-choice, pragmatic. But in 2026 Hollywood, that's extreme. Questioning anything politely can get you quietly sidelined. Yet after years of soft freeze treatment, he's suddenly welcomed back, showing Hollywood follows vibes, not principles. Maher suggests audiences are exhausted by performative wokeness. People don't hate empathy, they just hate being preached at, and Hollywood still hasn't figured that out.
It's not one that the woke can watch and not throw up, because I call their shit out and the fact that people are laughing shows that it's funny. When you do stupid things, it's funny. And the left did a lot more stupid things in the last 5 to 10 years. And I'm a comedian. I go where the gold is. And it's hitting the side of a barn to make fun of some of this shit.
It's too easy.
If you think, I quoted like very esteemed publications like The Atlantic or saying things like, separating sports by sex doesn't make sense. Well, if that's not of course it does. If anybody can't do 5 minutes on that, or Mr. Beast, who was helping disabled people, and the Washington Post guy was tweeting like, he thinks disability is something that needs to be.
Maher's point is that comedy thrives when the left makes it easy. People doing absurd things with total confidence are ripe material. The laughter proves the joke hits. He also critiques Hollywood's obsession with symbolic gestures, pins, ribbons, scarves, and hashtags that signal virtue but solve nothing. When asked why he didn't wear a pin for a tragedy, Maher said the event was awful, but he didn't need a costume to prove it, highlighting how absurdly performative moral seriousness has become.
Walking in, some reporter asked me why I wasn't wearing a lapel pin for the first Minneapolis shooting a couple of weeks ago, and I said, well, it was a terrible thing that happened, and it shouldn't have happened, and if they didn't act like such thugs, it wouldn't have had to happen, but I don't need to wear a pin about it. Now, please understand, I had no idea this question was coming, and so tonight, I'd like to say that if I had the chance to think about it, my answer would be exactly the same.
Caring and performing caring aren't the same. Most people act locally. They donate, volunteer, help neighbors, vote. Hollywood's version is ribbons, monologues, crying on camera, then returning to mansions. Maher's point about pins and ribbons is brutal but true. Decades of symbolic gestures haven't solved the problems they represent. The goal isn't change, it's showing you're on the right side, a performative version of virtue for social survival and reputation management.
You can't name a problem from guns to AIDS to bullying to breast cancer that still exists after people wore a ribbon for it. Except all of them. You posers. 3 years ago, everybody was all into Ukrainian flags. What happened to that? Another cause tossed into the junk drawer with yesterday's choke collar? Get out of here with your virtue-signaling body ornaments. They're just crucifixes for liberals.
Maher calls out celebrity activism as herd behavior, everyone copying the latest cause, often without understanding it. Hollywood turned empathy into a status symbol, and people stopped trusting celebrities as moral guides. Flying private to lecture working moms on sacrifice feels patronizing, like being scolded by someone who hasn't faced the consequences of the policies they preach.
You know, congratulations for raising awareness. The awareness you really care about, which is how wonderful you are. Ricky Gervais once told the award show crowd, "Don't use it as a platform to make a political speech. You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world." And of course, this is where celebrities say, "How dare you? We're citizens with just as much right to speak out." Agreed, you absolutely do. I'm just saying, don't. It's having the opposite effect of what you want.
Maher delivers a savage truth. The real celebrity superpower isn't money or fame. It's the ability to stay clueless in a bubble. He calls out Chappelle for claiming Saudi Arabia has more free speech than the US, pointing out the absurdity. Sure, America has problems, but trying to compare it to a place where opening a lesbian art gallery could get you arrested is ridiculous. It's comedy that cuts through the hype to deliver a reality check.
Against privilege, but you avail yourself of the greatest privilege of all, to remain clueless. Dave Chappelle lashed out at me last month because I called him out for saying there was more free speech in Saudi Arabia than here. Well, I was right. What he said was stupid. America has many problems, including free speech issues on both left and right, but we're real different than Saudi Arabia. If you don't believe me, try opening a lesbian art gallery there.
You can critique America without pretending it's as repressive as Saudi Arabia. Celebrity takes like that make them look detached, not brave, so deep in their narrative they ignore facts. The public senses it and tunes out, not because they hate truth, but because they hate being confidently misled. Maher also skewers award shows, calling them self-congratulatory virtue-signaling snooze fests. When the Golden Globes create categories just to reward a movie people actually enjoyed, it's clear the industry has lost the plot entirely.
Have to come up with new categories for the awards. The Golden Globes came up with a new one this year that basically picture people liked. They had, they had become such self-congratulating, virtue-signaling bores that they had to go, oh yeah, let's make a category for that. People actually paid to see something great. So there's a new Oscar category.
Audiences tune out because they don't want hours of lectures from actors making millions. Preaching humility from a golden stage feels absurd. Maher points out the bigger problem. Hollywood movies have become woke HR training videos. Characters speak in Twitter thread logic, plots take a backseat to messaging, and the vibe shifts from entertaining to "we're here to improve you."
In honor of the Academy Award show this Sunday, tonight, I would like to commemorate the moment 50 years ago that transformed the Oscar telecast into what it is today. A 4-hour lecture on how bad most people have it by the people who have it the best. I'm constantly amazed when I rewatch movies from only a decade or so ago, and they were made in a way that today would get you burned at the Twitter.
Audiences don't hate messages in movies. They hate being preached to. People pay to be entertained, not scolded. Great films can tackle important issues while still telling a real story, with believable characters and subtle craft. But when ideology becomes the focus and the story takes a back seat, viewers sense the manipulation and stop caring. Maher points out that even older liberal films would face harsh criticism on social media today, showing that it's not the creators who changed, but the culture of fear and social pressure that now dictates what art is acceptable.
Complicated. From 2009, to name just one of many I could choose, was made by a who's who of the most blue ribbon certified Hollywood liberals, woke approved and Democratic Party contributing, from the stars to the producers to the director. But it apparently occurred to none of them to have any kind of minority in the cast. You would need a divining rod to find a person of color within 500 feet of this movie.
When Maher says Hollywood has lost touch with its audience, he's not exaggerating. Ratings and ticket sales are down because viewers are gravitating toward content that feels made by real people, not an industry obsessed with self-congratulation. He isn't saying to ignore important issues. He's saying stop faking it. Stop confusing performative morality with real storytelling, stop turning art into activism homework, and stop rewarding people for saying the right things instead of making the best movies. Hollywood wants to stay relevant. It needs to do the one thing it hates: listen instead of lecture. The real question is whether the industry is genuinely changing or just rebranding the same performative habits under a new label.